Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. I am feeling much more refreshed, and I think that has a lot to do with something I want to talk about real quick at the start of the stream. So as you guys have no doubt noticed, there haven't been a whole lot of YouTube videos in the past couple of weeks. A lot of that has been a degree of exhaustion, but it's an exhaustion that's been coming from a personal part in my life behind the scenes. I'm not going to get into it here. I've talked about it a little bit on my live stream, but it's basically meant that when I'm off camera, I'm really just trying to chill, relax, make sure I'm in a stable and correct mindset. Because if I'm not, then the recordings they get kind of scratchy. You can kind of hear it in my Every Way to Level video. It almost feels like I forget how to speak from time to time. So I've been making sure to do that. I've been playing a ton of games on the side. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater Remaster, so good. We also have Avengers, which I've been going through the bugs and still kind of enjoying it, even though the bugs are pretty rough. Kingdoms of Amalur is on Tuesday. Star Renegades is on Tuesday. Obviously, you guys know we played Mortal Shell, Crystal Chronicles, and I do have thoughts videos to make on all those things, but I haven't been able to bring myself to make videos. I've had to do this explanation before, but it's something very particular that's been on my mind, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks, like 11 days, around that, hopefully I'll be in a much better mindset, because there's one particular event I need to pass this month for me to feel like I can breathe easy and stop worrying so much about things. But hopefully you guys understand. I hate whenever I'm not able to make a whole lot of content, especially because I have a whole heap and hell of a lot of content I want to make. I actually am very excited to make some of the videos, but by the time I wrap up with the stream, I feel like, oh, like I want to melt in my chair and just not exist for 2 hours and then go back to existing. And no, not now. I just want to not exist. I want reality to flash in a second and be gone in 2 hours, and then I'll be back. But hopefully you guys understand, and we'll be getting back to a more regular schedule and some interesting video ideas that I have for the coming months. But anyway, with that, let me thank my patrons and we can get started. Thank you to all of the users supporting over on Patreon. You guys have actually been more important to me these last several months than you know. With, again, some of the personal things I've been dealing with. It's been great. But not just to be clear, you don't have to support over there. This isn't a plea for anything. I'm just letting you guys know that it's meant a lot to me as of late. There's been a lot of people with some outpouring of support with what I've been going on with, and it's meant a lot to me over on Patreon as well. And to our patrons of Darkness, Khuja, Janova, and Kurenai Oni, who have gone above and beyond, you get a special thank you. And of course, the images on the screen. So thank everyone who's been enjoying the videos, the few videos that there have been. Just having you guys here every week means a lot to me as of late. So with that, let's get into the Q&A, shall we? Oh boy, a busy comment section, which shouldn't surprise me much after last week. Hashtag Miss Every Mondays. That outro was fantastic. Keep being you. Thank you. Quick question. I'm sure you've talked about it before, but I appreciate it if you can take a quick minute to answer. Sure. What card do you use for video capture? What software do you use for recording, podcast / editing videos? So this is a multifaceted answer for certain. Card we use for video capture, Elgato HD60 Pro, the internal one that's hooked directly up to the motherboard. When I got that, the internal card was really the only way to go, but the external card works fairly well right now. I do also have some AverMedia capture cards around. One of them is used for this camera, actually, although Sly was saying I should actually grab a cam link for that instead. And I also have a mobile one for conventions, which probably won't see any use anytime soon, let's be real. On top of that, what software do you use for recording? So for recording, it's a mix of a few things. We've used a lot of actual live stream footage, which would make OBS the recording program. And quite frankly, I do use OBS quite frequently. However, as of late, we've been using something that I used years ago, took a break from using, and then went back to, in that of Mrhappy Action. It is a program that you can buy, and it's one of the best local recording capture programs that I've used in a long time. So Mrhappy Action, really solid. One could recommend that. As for editing videos, Sony Vegas Pro is what I've opted into using. I would say that Adobe Premiere is probably the better program, but it has a steeper learning curve. So if you're willing to put the time in to learn that, you could probably do a lot more fantastic things with it. Not that you can't do great things with Sony Vegas Pro. In fact, having a template and working with Vegas Pro is kind of why I stuck with it instead of learning Premiere. But those are really your options. I use Sony Vegas Pro. It's just a matter of they like to update it frequently. Hey, we got this new version. Oh, sorry, I still got my lunch plate here. We got a new version. You should buy the new version. I'm like, you guys are killing me right now. But that's everything I use, so hopefully that covers everything. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Thank you for answering my last question regarding Alliance missions Unreal. I'd like to expand the topic on Alliance missions if possible. Alliance missions? I remember you calling them missions last week, though. Maybe it's just my memory. Given that large and larger scale missions in the 24-mans and Baldesion Arsenal are highly praised for the design and challenge, what do you think of the viability of an Alliance semi-extreme or extreme missions that are used? The use of the term missions is really throwing me off, because I feel like I'm playing PSO2 again all of a sudden. They're not used to catch up or something meaningful for players that already have high-end equipment to organize for. The problem is not about what you have equipment for. It's about, this was the point I was trying to make last week. One of the points I was trying to make last week is it's the sheer number of people that need to be organized and then to keep it all together for any sort of reasonable experience. Now, Baldesion Arsenal gets around this by having a severe penalty for death, but making it so that it's otherwise not a super challenging 24-man. There's really only a few things that kind of catch people off guard in Baldesion Arsenal. All the more basic things have been worked to death, plus with Logos actions, you can kind of, get around a lot of those more problematic things just by being an absolute beast with your Logos actions. Now, I'm not against the idea, but again, the idea of coordinating 24 people, obviously not an impossible thing. WoW's been doing 20-mans, with Mythic for ages and had 25-mans in the past, and well, let's not talk about 40-mans because those are currently and have always been an absolute disaster. But that's really all it comes down to. It's just coordinating people. And mind you that people that have already got gear are not going to use the 24-mans to get more gear to then gear up for the other 8-mans. So what are they feasibly going to accomplish with this? Other than having a slightly harder 24-man that maybe rewards more I-500, so they have a slightly different BIS, for example, but then you're just going to replace it with crafted 510, right, going into the next patch. So it just doesn't, it feels like a void that, like, exists, but doesn't need to exist, I suppose, if that makes sense. I just don't see a point in throwing resources into a mid-level 24-man that's harder than the current ones. Whereas I'd rather they focus more on maybe coming up with new systems for small groups again. I just think the idea of coordinating 4 to 8 people is always going to be better than the idea of coordinating 24 plus, unless it's something with the average difficulty of Baldesion Arsenal. I see Steel Series in this one. I got to take this. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, how are you? Hello. First time asker, long time viewer. Have a bonus of anything you want. Pizza. Stromboli. There we go. I know Steel Series sponsor you. They sure do. And you've got their keyboard and their headset. I've attempted to change from Razer to Steel Series thoughts. I've got already got the Steel Series headset. So Steel Series, going back a little bit for those who are newer to the channel, years and years ago, I was pretty much committed to the idea of getting a Razer partnership/sponsorship with the channel, because growing up, going into college, that was like the first gaming, I guess, peripheral company that I came to know, and I didn't use anything else for the longest time. That was after going through like 4 or 5 Razer Nagas that just kept breaking every, like, God knows how many months. Eventually, when I went to a convention, I managed to connect with someone from Steel Series, and they sent me some product. I really liked it, and I started off with an affiliate. Over the years, I've worked with them constantly. We're now sponsored by them. We have a discount link in the description of pretty much every video, and they have been an excellent company for me personally to work with. My experience with them has been fantastic. And so I haven't used a Razer keyboard since that time, and I don't even remember which one it was. But I've specifically used mostly the Apex series keyboards with Steel Series. I don't remember what they were called pre-Apex series, because this Apex, the more recent one's been just grinded into my head. But the Apex M750 I was using for ages. I still have it. It's still good, but I recently updated to an Apex Pro, because why not, right? And I've been really, really enjoying it. It's a little quieter than the other one, but I've never had any issues with my Steel Series keyboard ever. So I'm not super into the different tech that goes into keyboards, the different switches. You know, all that matters to me is that my keystrokes are represented in the game that I'm playing, and it sounds a little noisy, because I actually like the way it sounds. And for that, my keyboard's functioned perfectly fine. I'm not here to sell you on the individual switches. I'm here to tell you that I have a product I've enjoyed for however long that I've had it, both the Apex M750 before this and the Pro that I have now. So not much of a salesman aspect, but I'm not trying to be. I just use the things that work and the things that I like, and thankfully Steel Series happens to fit both of those categories. So if you would like to buy one, please go to the description of the video where you can find the Mr. Happy 12 discount link, 12% off your order, and an affiliate link, which gives me kickback. But if you can find a better deal elsewhere, go do that instead, because you should look out for yourself. This one's weird. There's like a question and then the hashtag and then a question. Okay. You don't have to answer this. When the yokai event first came out, didn't the amount of medals go up by 2 every time you bought a weapon? I don't think it was every time you bought a weapon. I think it was like I think after the first weapon it went up, and then I think it was like 3 weapons later it went up. I don't know. I don't remember exactly how it worked, but yeah, I think you used to need 30 medals for like the last 3 weapons. Yeah, that got nerfed significantly with the recent event. Anyway, hashtag Mr. Happy Ones. I don't know why it's designed like this. Hello, how are you? Hi. Just one question aside, the one you really don't need to answer. When will the caster verses be out? I did the caster versus. You mean the tank versus? I put out a caster versus, didn't I? I gotta check. I'm like 99% sure I put out a caster versus like a few months ago. Let's see. Oh, let me type Red Mage. Red Mage. Yeah, it's right there. April 23rd. So April 23rd, 2020 is when it's going to release. All right, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps, hello. Hope you're doing well, and I hope you're doing well as well, because it looked like I was saying hope you're doing well before I read that you hope you're doing well, and now we're just talking about it. I have a couple of quick questions that I've wondered about for a while. Sure. First is regarding the tax fee you pay when buying on the market board. Is there a reason we have to pay this? I was thinking maybe to stop people from flipping items. So MMOs generally need two key things to generate an economy and to keep an economy in place. The first thing to generate an economy is some sort of gil creation, or in this case, any sort of economy creation. Activities you can do, whether it be killing random enemies out in the world or completing certain objectives, that just reward money. It's just coming out of nowhere. It's not taken out of another player's pocket who's already earned it. We see this with things like the challenge lock, like I said, from killing monsters that actually straight up drop gil, or vendoring common items to an NPC. Those are all ways that economy is generated from nothing in a game, and 14 has a lot of methods of doing that. The other thing to keep an economy in check and try to decrease the rate at which the value of each individual currency is inflated is gil sinks, in our case with gil. And that's basically things that send the economy into the void. It's completely removed from all players' pockets and deleted from the game, essentially. Now, housing is probably our biggest one, but let's not talk about housing in this video because I want to keep it positive to some degree. So the tax is one of those. It's a gil sink. And so anything that looks like it has a pointless surcharge that just doesn't seem to go anywhere, it's because it's trying to keep the economy somewhat in check. It doesn't really work in Final Fantasy 14 because gil is so easy to make, but it's that's a big reason. Second is the fee we pay when teleporting. There you go. I just answered the second question as well. So thanks for asking questions about the tax and fees, about gil sinks in general. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello. Hi. Hope you're doing well in the difficult times we live. 2 questions this time. I hope you're doing well also. First, last week for the first time, I and some friends finished Savage content. Cool. Congratulations. Fulmination. Figured was probably Fulmination. I didn't think you skipped right to Shiva. That would have been crazy. We'll prog Fury this next Saturday and try to re-clear. Is there any advice you could give us for the path to success? I mean, honestly, as if you got through Fulmination, in my opinion is harder than Fury. Well, Fury is more hilarious in the Party Finder, I find, but Fulmination is probably the more difficult of the two. So just do what you did for the first one. As long as everyone's not yelling and getting angry at each other, that's all you really need. That's all that ever really matters. If you guys are trying to do it blind, then just kind of be open to the advice that everyone else is giving. If not, watch a video. Watch a few videos. Watch a couple of videos. Watch different perspectives. Don't just watch guides. Watch actual, full perspective videos of somebody else who's already played your job through the encounter. That's a massive, massive way to get at least a good view on how they're handling everything. Second, we ran into a problem with classes, with 3 people melee and only me as the caster. In the middle of prog, one of the players switched out to a ranged DPS, but he really prefers to play with his samurai. What do you think we should do? 3 melees. So I'm going to say this. Having 3 of a role, realistically, it's not great because you're losing 2% raid damage. So you're, wait, 2%. 1, 2, 3. No, you're losing a 1% raid damage. I don't know where I was going with that. You're losing a 1% raid damage from not having the ranged physical. But quite frankly, the bigger thing is 3 melee blows. There's some mechanics that a melee is just not going to have fun with in that case. While he really prefers to play samurai, you guys should probably talk out if somebody is actually going to change jobs, because that sucks. Triple melee just sucks from a perspective of the melees having to suffer having 2 other melees. There's just... I can already imagine situations where one of your melees is going to be really mad he has to handle a mechanic a certain way, and there's going to be nothing you can do about it because of the sheer number of melees that you have. So you guys just have to sit down and agree to something because there's no other way around it. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello and good day, Mr. Happy. Good day to you too. Long-time viewer, first-time asker. Got a couple of questions. Cool. One, a while ago they reshuffled the data centers and allowed cross-server play. I remember Yoshi saying they eventually wanted to allow cross-data center. You think we'll see that sooner rather than later? I'm hoping for 6.0 because you're correct. Yoshi P did say this, and he not only said that, but he said they thought they had found a way to make it possible. It was just going to be really difficult. They were already looking at a way to do it, and they said they thought they found a way. Now, we don't know if that actually panned out or if it ended up being something that was way too difficult to actually use, but they want it and we want it, and if it's going to happen, I'd imagine it happen like on or around an expansion launch, maybe right before to test the servers, like a 5.58 style timing, or you know, actually no, that's the only time I'd imagine they do it, because that's when they did the data center shuffles as well. Two, now that the dust has long settled, how are the new data center cultures? They're pretty much as people kind of expected them to be. Ether and Primal have a greater focus on raid content, and Crystal has a greater focus on a wider variety of content. There's a lot more role-playing on Crystal between a couple of servers, actually not just Balmung like a lot of people think. There are people who raid. There are plenty of communities on there that, you know, have no issues with this and, you know, do the party finder. I've even gone over to Crystal and taken a peek at their party finder and seen at times them have even more entries in the party finder, specifically the high-end duty finder, than even Ether, which is kind of surprising. It doesn't really surprise me that much because Ether people clear and then they just stop. On Crystal, because the population of it is on average lower based on some data that's been pulled by Lucky Bancho, it's more likely that people have a longer term investment or interest in doing that style of content. So it kind of makes sense when you think about it that way. So it all kind of worked out. Crystal still gets memed on for being Crystal still to this day, but it's kind of tired at this point. Other than the occasional sarcastic joke, it's kind of worn its welcome, and most people are just kind of content with the way things are, or patiently waiting for cross data center play. So hopefully we get that at some point. We know they're working on it. They know they want a solution to it, and hopefully they achieve it. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello there, Haps. Hope you are well. Hello, and hope you are well also. I've had to say that a lot this video, and you know what? That's fine. You've said you haven't played Crystal Chronicles before the remaster due to the whole GBA with link cables fun back on the GameCube, so I'm interested to hear your thoughts on how this experience went. So on to the question. How did you find Crystal Chronicles Remastered? So obviously, so I actually, remember how I said there's some videos that I'm working on currently, thoughts videos? I actually have a full Crystal Chronicles thoughts video recorded and not edited because my soul just can't take it off stream right now. I hate to be the one to admit it. But my overall experience was, I can see why it's a cult favorite, or it's a cult classic, meaning that like there's a really hardcore, dedicated, you know, type of person that really remembers it fondly. And then you look at like everyone who didn't play it kind of seeing it for the first time like myself, and we see that there's a lot of drawbacks with this style of game that they attempted, but that it also has this, I guess this charm to it, I guess is the best way to put it. How would I put it? Let's just be clear. It doesn't have a super interesting story. It doesn't have a lot of, you know, cinematic storytelling. The combat's rather simple, which makes sense given it was one of their first forays into action combat when it comes to that. The dungeons are actually fun. The music's fantastic. The visual aesthetics, especially the remastered ones, are great. They're very Final Fantasy while still also kind of standing out from a lot of the rest of the Final Fantasy series until we started to see the Final Fantasy 3 and 4 style DS remakes that, you know, hit the DS, you know, some years later. And then, of course, the multiplayer. I didn't get to play it with local multiplayer, and I still don't because it doesn't have local multiplayer. That's always a strike against something, even if I don't really care if it has local multiplayer or not. It's just a feature that it doesn't have. And instead uses the Bring a Friend feature from the original, as I'm told, where people just join other people's caravans. It has its pros and cons with the multiplayer. Drop in, drop out gameplay, just playing with complete randos is actually a lot of fun. But playing with friends is a bit of a headache because only the host is going to get progress. And for the final dungeon, all hosts actually need to have all the party members actually need to have a minimum amount of progress before they're allowed to do it. So there's a bit of a pain there, but we got through that. I finished the whole game. I did some post-game grinding. The actual post-game grinding is quite involved and a little bit manipulatable, but overall, it was a fun experience. I'm glad after all this time I finally got to experience it, understand what it is when people talk about it, and I kind of hope that we see some of the later ones remastered and brought forward, because from what I'm told, they actually have far more focused narratives, far more interesting stories, and still kind of continue the tradition that Crystal Chronicles, the original one, began. So hopefully we'll see those later, because I'm at least interested enough to see this through to the next part. All right, this one's kind of chunky on the text, so let's see. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. You didn't say hello. You just asked if I was doing all right, and that's acceptable. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. I've been lurking for a while, and I want to get your opinion. Oh boy, opinion questions always rough. On the job and level system in 14, the future of leveling. I hope this question makes sense, because it's rather hard to put into words. I've been playing many of the previous Final Fantasy titles. Noticed many of the jobs I've seen can't be put into 14, either due to sheer complexity. I'm going to level with everyone as someone who played Final Fantasy 11 for years. There's no job in the existence of Final Fantasy that has ever been too complex for Final Fantasy 14. There are jobs that conceptually are hard to capture in regards to their essence, which is Blue Mage was one of them, which is why it got made into a limited job. But there's almost no job that is, quote, too complex for Final Fantasy 14. 14's iterations of most jobs are more gameplay complex than they were prior. Just previous ones had lots of fluff, you know, RPG fluff, like multiple elements or things that could be resisted by one type and not resisted by the other. Yeah, things like that. So that's something I would completely rule out ever. But however, too similar to a job currently in the game, that totally makes sense. Playing 14, I also noticed we're going to hit level 100 in 7.0. Yeah, in 3 years. It's going to be a while. Found an easy but wonderful solution. Job upgrades and making a mastery system to take over the existing level cap once we start 8.0. But that doesn't change that people still need to level. That doesn't actually change something, since most of the job upgrades already exist in PvE and previous games laid out the groundwork for those jobs. Yeah, you're right. I don't think this is worded correctly, because so here's the thing. The idea of jobs advancing is not actually foreign. Yoshi P has suggested that they could have done that at some point in the past. However, you have to consider how many jobs there are and how many need to advance. Because right now that would be 17 main jobs and 1 limited, but let's not kid ourselves, that's not happening. 17 jobs that would need to advance. So you've obviously got some of the easy ones that you can do, like, as you said, White Mage into Devout, or Black Mage into Magus, Warrior into Berserker. But what does Samurai become? Super Samurai? 6 Samurais. Yu-Gi-Oh! And the list goes on, like, yeah, Red Mage, Red Battle Mage, you know, that's been a thing in the past, you know. Thief Ninja was already a Final Fantasy 1 that can't. So that's actually, if anything, it doesn't do anything. So unless you've got something else, again, yeah, maybe your point's not being made, but this doesn't change a level cap existing. You're just changing the name of something, which can be cool because you can thematically update it into being something else without rewriting it from level 1. But I don't think that actually accomplishes anything, nor does it make it any easier on the devs. The devs still have to balance it doesn't matter if you take 17 jobs and advance them into 17 mastered jobs. There's still 17 playable jobs in the game, and that all need to be balanced. It doesn't even make it easier or harder, if anything. It just doesn't change. And as you add more jobs, that's going to continue to happen. So I just think eventually they slow down the number of jobs, or hire more people to balance the jobs that we currently have, or do less job changes per, like, patch. They're like, whatever they can fit in, they can do, but they don't do like all the jobs all at once for like the in-between patches, like 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, etc., which has kind of already been the case, you know, up to now. But I think my point's being made well enough. This wouldn't actually change anything, so I don't think it accomplishes what you seem to want it to accomplish. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello. Hey. Second time asking, congrats on the 185 leaves. Yeah, I'm only up to 200 after the last week, but I'm getting there. What do you think about the party finders that lock the average item level too high, like recently for Shiva? I'm assuming you mean Savage, 480 to 490, and why do you do this? So I'll say this: 480, I don't think is an unreasonable cap. Anything over that is what I don't understand. So here's the thing: 480 takes about 1 to 1.5 million Gillinger there. That's the bottom line. I don't consider that too high a cap. I consider somebody just wants somebody to care about having at least good entry-level gear before getting into a raid. I understand that 470 and 475 are the required item levels for Fulmination and Furor, but to ask someone to care a little bit makes sense. Now, 481 is one that is kind of pointless, but has a very direct intent of cutting out people who just went to the auction house or the market board and just bought 480 gear. They're deliberately trying to lock only that group of individuals out, which doesn't really work, because if you have any Phantasmagoria now, you just upgrade it to 490 and you can be at like 483 or 484 in a matter of minutes. Not to mention how easy it is to get some other 490 stuff or with your tomestones, whatever. It doesn't even work. Now, 490 is ridiculous. That is going too far. That's someone who has hit the point where they do not trust the party finder, so much so to the point where they think the only way they're going to overcome how inept they believe the party finder is and how inept it can actually be is to have people as geared as possible. And that doesn't really work either. I feel like you're just gonna get screwed about 50 to 60% of the time anyway. You might as well just take that 480 to 485 recommendation at most. Honestly, just the 40 recommendation should be okay. And run with that. You know what? I'll say 485 to be especially generous. Because 480 on Shiva is week 1 item level Shiva DPS. And unless you're playing to that degree, quite frankly, you're probably not going to kill it. So, you know, unless people are, you know, all rocking like 500 weapons or 495 weapons, you know, things like that, that'll really push them that extra little bit. But 490, I've seen 495 locks. That's absurd no matter what category we're talking about here. Yeah, yeah. Okay, but now this, I've seen one was locked at 480 and it was set to practice. I couldn't join the help. I asked if they could lower it, so they didn't. My own set it to 430. Okay, so you're saying the 430. So 430 is the... So you're not talking about Savage? You're talking about Unreal? Oh. Yeah, that's... Why the fuck would you lock it to 480 for Unreal? It's capped at 430. Listen, again, it's all the same mentality. But come on, Party Finder. Come on. All right, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Mr. Happy. Hope you're doing well. I like this hope you're doing well. I hope you're all doing well. Maybe I should just say that at the beginning of the first question and then not say it for the rest of them. I hope all of you who ask me a question are doing well. Okay. Do you think Square Enix should change how they discuss new types of content? Their vagueness often implies more complexity and an earlier release date to some. I'll finish reading it, but the to some part at the end is very key. 2 examples. Player-owned farms were promised during the run-up to Shadowbringers and remain absent almost 2 years later. I have made note of that. And Discard Restoration is basically just custom deliveries without limitations. If you've been playing for a long time, paying close attention to the promises they make, and keep your attention grounded in that versus reality, none of this should surprise. So if you have common sense, nothing should surprise you. But if you like to make shit up in your head and conflate it yourself, then it's a problem. And that's exactly where my answer is going to go. A good job of balancing expectation setting versus building hype. So let me put it clearly. I am almost never surprised at what they do in the large scale scheme of things. I'm only ever surprised at the minute details that they either miss or that I didn't think of. Because overall, even when there's been some degree of change, like for example, Bajda actually allowing leveling, I didn't see that coming. I was a fantastic surprise, and it made sense considering I kept wondering, I wonder what people will do because there's no deep dungeon from 70 to 80. Never even crossed my mind. It was fantastic and went above my expectations. So that was actually a positive surprise in this regard. But then you look at talking about player-run farms, something he said he wanted by a certain date or that they were hoping to have incorporated by a certain date. They didn't have that. I remember them talking about the Mary Poppins umbrellas that they wanted. And I don't mean the ones we have now. I mean literally as a mount, a Mary Poppins umbrella. Who knows, maybe we actually get that at some point. I feel like, yeah, if you're someone who's brand new and you want to conflate expectation for, above reality, this is when this happens the most. But again, if you're someone who's been playing for a while, you kind of learn to read between the lines and see that they are everything they're telling you is a factual truth. Ishgard Restoration, the goal of it is to come together as a community and restore Ishgard. They want this crafting and gathering like leaderboards that you can fight to be the one who contributes the most. You can use it to level, you can use it to gain resources. There's stuff you can sell on the market board. There's all sorts of things. And all those things are factual. But when you boil it down to its most basic principles, you are gathering and you are doing collectibles. and that's it. That is, or I'm sorry, you're doing custom deliveries. You know, it boils down to that in the end. But that's kind of how Final Fantasy XIV functions. It's, here's this base that we have. Here's all these activities we've balanced, we've developed. Now we need to create activities for you to do with those things. They don't need to fundamentally break the mold, but they need to work within the boundaries of our game. And that's why whenever I have job-related, like job change-related questions, or you know, could they do this thematically with the job? I try to keep them within those bounds because people like to try and reach for ideas that are outside of what we can currently believe can exist in Final Fantasy XIV, based on the way that the game's, you know, groundwork has been laid and the way that they've updated it in the past. So I don't think they need to, but they also seem to kind of agree with you. So with Shadowbringers launch, they ran into an issue where a lot of people were expecting the second job unveil to be a healer. It ended up being Dancer, or DPS. And Yoshi P had made mention that perhaps in the future, and this was in my interview with him, so I've got the word directly from the man, that perhaps in the future they should reveal how many jobs and what roles the jobs are before going into the announcements later, so people don't create false expectation. And I think they're going to be taking that approach more and more with more types of things in the future. So you're kind of getting what you want in regards to them improving their vagueness for sake of setting up excitement and hype for at least some clarity of expectation. So kind of get what you want, but also people just need to stop creating ideas in their heads without basing them on something that is reasonable. It's like some sort of context that's already present. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Totally. Oh, you didn't say hello. Why would you do this? Totally makes sense on overworld not being the main strength of the game, and that's why it's not a focus for content. In hindsight, raids and story are my favorite parts of the game. Cheers. Glad you enjoyed last week's answer. Question for the week. What is good advice for getting into ultimate fights having never done them before? I never did Savage until Shadowbringers, but now I'm hooked and I'm looking for the next step. Is there one of the three that is a good starting point? Oh man, I always like to argue Ultima is the best starting point. Ukab is the most grueling to progress. It's the longest encounter. It has a ton of instant death, instant wipe checks across the entire thing that will send you all the way back to the beginning, all the way through to the final phase. Ultima has a few checks that you can fail and keep going to at least see a little further into the fight, maybe practice a different mechanic. Ultima basically is split into two fights. I also think Ultima is probably the easiest one. Most of its difficulty from its initial prog came in figuring out the mystery behind the Woken mechanic. And so once that was solved, I mean, everyone's done the work for you already in regards to progression. So unless you want to do it completely blind, that's probably the easiest one. T sits somewhere between the middle. T has some of the most brutal mechanics of the three ultimates. It also has some of the easiest mechanics of all of the ultimates. And once you can get past the first 6 minutes, there's only really one thing that absolutely destroys people, and that's Wormhole after that. Not to say you can't wipe on other things, but that's the one thing that really throws people for a loop. I think Ultima is the best of the fights to get started with. As for getting into it, Party Finder, new static, fresh learning, look for that. Maybe a forum post, maybe a recruitment thread over on Reddit or someplace like that. That's the best thing I could think to recommend. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Mr. Happy. First time asker. Oh, dude, you have the same typing tick that I do. So I have this really bad typing tick where I interchangeably switch the R and the D's at the end of a lot of words. So like instead of asker, I would type asked or vice versa. I do the same thing. Longtime viewer, as a bonus, have one wish to remake any one game of your choice. Dude, I got Tony Hawk. I'm all set. We're good. I have only one question. What are the odds of you making another podcast if you're talking about other games? So we actually did do a few runs of another podcast called TBG, or Talking About Games, where we analyzed a few of the other trends in the game industry. Now, these were actually supposed to fill in weeks between State of the Realm, and they're not off the table. I did really, really enjoy doing those, and I would like to continue. But similar to my thing at the beginning, off-stream time has just been very personal for me. I've been spending it just trying to woosah my way through the rest of the day, just to relax. So that's something we've done, and it's something we will continue to do. I can't give you a set schedule on it though, because I need to get out of the funk before I can get back into the dunk. I tried, I really did. But yeah, that's look for that. Look for TBG. I think we did 1 or 2 episodes of TBG already. All right, so this recording's already getting pretty long, and I have quite a few questions left, so I'm going to opt in to a lightning round. So here we go. This is where we just try to just rattle off as many answers as we can in as short a period of time with no editing. So let's do that. Let me see here. I got to find the first one. Hey there, Haps. Hope your week went well. Love the outro from the last Monday. I have 2 questions. One, how soloable would you say 11 is right now? Almost entirely, other than maybe one boss in Secrets of Adulin and a couple of bosses at the end of Rhapsodies of Vana'diel. Now, that's obviously just for the actual story. There's plenty of content that if you don't have a group, it's going to be a disaster for you to do anyway. But I'd say if you just want to experience the story, almost all of it, and it's really easy to get groups for those last few activities. 2, I noticed that 14 doesn't have nearly the same level of lore YouTubers as other universes such as WoW and Elder Scrolls. My question for you here is, where do you think the best place to start with tackling that from a lore perspective? In hindsight, I should probably go ask at this, but here I am. I feel like those games have stretched off. So all the Elder Scrolls games are part of the same universe. World of Warcraft, all of its books, its previous games are all part of the same universe. The game likes to sprinkle in little secrets here or there that don't get answered for years and years down the line. Now, Final Fantasy XIV does this, and Final Fantasy XIV has a ton of lore. We literally have 2 entire encyclopedias full of lore, from items to locations to eras of time. We also have now an entire shard, plus an entire amount of unknown shards that we don't know what they're like, or the hardships that they've been through, or the hardships that led to their demise in particular. So there's a lot of lore and there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of unexplained and a lot of unanswered. Those games have been around longer. They had a series that came beforehand that have fed into the current series like Elder Scrolls Online and World of Warcraft, and they've just had more time to develop that, whereas Final Fantasy has always been about creating a lot of individual stories and just using some recurring themes, maybe some enemies or some summons or things like that, and not building this consistent world with which all lore will be pulled from simultaneously. So that is a big reason why. There's only so many things to talk about lore-wise, and most of the time it's questions, followed by maybe 1 or 2 answers. So they like to give us a lot of questions, but not a lot of answers. That's my opinion on that one. That should have just been a full question. I'm not going to lie. Let me see what here. Let's see this one. Any chance you'll post any Fall Guys related videos? I actually love watching Fall Guys. Probably not going to post anything. Nothing against it. I think it's a cool game. I think it's a fun game, but it just probably won't happen. Not much of an interest from me personally to create content for it on the YouTube channel. Why don't normal or hard trials drop anything useful? Great question. That's a great question. There's no answer. It's just a good question. That's it. That's literally it. I got nothing else for you. It's a good question. Started playing around 3.4. Big Hunter. Big Hunter is filler content. Kind of said you can never experience the older marks. What marks from 2.0 did your other people love hate? I hated trying to eat finger sandwiches to make the big Cyclops appear in Central Thanalan. You didn't even have to eat finger sandwiches, but for a while people thought that they were going to. That one's a favorite of mine. Oni Yumimi. I don't want to talk about Oni Yumimi from Stormblood. No, don't want it. Don't want it. Don't want it at all. Let's see. Let's see. What's this? What would be nice? Would it be nice if mount or minion favorite list could be double, tripled, or any amount? Sure, it doesn't really matter to me, but if other people want it, I'm not one to tell them they can't have it. Sneaky bonus question, do you think mounts that have an ability to deal damage to open world mobs? No, it'd be too easy to grief new players with that. And if you can grief new players with it, the Final Fantasy XIV devs are almost instantly against it. Even if just the thought of it could happen. So probably not going to be the case. I'm sure somebody would find a way to glitch it and bring mounts into like a raid and like one-shot that somehow too. I don't know, something really weird. I have no faith that wouldn't happen. How do you think Square Enix will redesign Monk? Yeah, I've been getting this. I got to stop taking these questions because I actually have no idea. They've suggested a few things. People have already speculated a few things, but we're just gonna have to wait and find out. In English, there are many words which are a combination of 2 words, like don't or can't. But what about ain't? Is there a freaking word called I? Well, AI is artificial intelligence. So this is artificial intelligence not. It's 3 words, actually. All right, now I'm done being lame. That's the best I got for that one. What are the odds of us getting a healer similar to WoW's Disc Priest? Probably pretty... I wouldn't say it's unlikely. We already have an ability in that of a size that has a dual function. Energy drain, sort of, but not really. I don't think it's entirely unreasonable. I don't think it as a whole would function like Disc Priest, but elements of it I think it's a reasonable expectation, adding a little bit of healing for dealing damage, especially with how easy they've made it to deal damage as a healer. And if they had Geomancer from Tactics, what role do you think it would fit best in? The thing about Geomancers, I could seriously imagine any role. Yes, even tank. There's all sorts of interpretations. That's the wonderful thing about interpretations of jobs and kind of going off the rail with some of your with some of the way that your brain can process certain ideas. You come up with all sorts of things. I think it'd be most likely a caster, and some people are predicting it may be the caster for 6.0, but we'll see. That's a big old maybe. Do you think they'll ever increase the experience gained from previous beast tribes? I think so. I just did the all ways to level video, and man, the old beast tribes just don't compare to the Shadowbringers ones. The Heavensward and Stormblood ones are okay, but man, the Realm Reborn ones in particular, oof, those are rough. And even the Heavensward and Stormblood ones are worse than the Shadowbringers ones. Pixies are just so damn good. Let's see, what else do we got here? Party Finder locked. Use your wisdom to make Yoshi P revamp housing. That's not how I have a professional relationship with Square Enix as a company. I do not get to call Yoshi P and be like, yo, change housing. That's not how it works. It'd be cool if it did, but that's not how it works. You spoke about how you degrade when you get older. Do people in 14... do people players in 14, just like others who don't do their rotations right, seem to be off focus while trying? So you mean like they are trying, but it's just like it's not all the way coming together? No, a lot of the times it's people being unaware of other people's circumstances and just seeing the performance at the end and being like, oh my god, this person sucks. I generally try to be kind of tame when I see people performing poorly, whether it's I don't know what their previous experience is, how often they've done this, if it's their first time playing that job. I try to be relatively understanding until we get to the point where they start flaming other people for making mistakes, at which point I'm like, yo, gloves are fucking off, boy, let's go. Let's fucking go. No more. No more. Not waiting. So as long as that doesn't happen, then it's generally okay. I will say this, that if you play a way that is deemed as the incorrect way, meaning like you're doing something that has been proven to be worse, and somebody tells you, hey, you know, you could improve by doing this, and you tell them just like, you know, no, I'm not going to do that. That I think is ignorant and arrogant, and that's bad attitude personally. Do you think red mages need a dot? I don't play red mage. I should not be answering that question, but no, they don't need a dot. They could get one. Don't need it. Do you think we'd ever see a dress fear-like system? No. I actually like 10-2's combat, but no. For pet rework, something like PSO2, Crystal Chronicles question, Savage content question, the tax fee. What do you expect? When do you expect the 6.0 trailer? Whenever the replacement for FanFest happens. What story do you think will be 6.0? Whatever story we're already continuing now. The final story of the star, as they may have said. What are the white tires? The white, I don't know if you mean this, the shelves. That's a scratching post. And the other thing that's now off camera for the most part, this part right here, is a cat tower. So that's what that is right there. Let's see. Ideal fixes for Monkey. I really shouldn't be answering that because I don't know. I haven't played it enough as of late to really have too in-depth of an opinion about it. Let's see. It's a skip. Would a healer with a whip work? It doesn't. Whip would give them range. Well, whip traditionally belongs to Beastmaster, so that's a big question mark. I mean, what weapon they have is irrelevant. All I'm saying is a healer needs to be able to perform at all rolls. You can't be like, oh, here's a melee combo, and then when I leave the boss, it's whatever. You need to be functional at all ranges. So if whip is mid-range weapon, long-range weapon, then yeah, sure, why not? I'm not one to say no to that. It's not like I'm the one making the jobs or anything. Will Totoro ever have a disciple of war magic? After seeing the way she handled that carbuncle, I hope not, because I ain't taking her on any adventures. After what she did in Stormblood in the solo duty, I'm not taking her on any adventures, man. She's bad news bears as far as I'm concerned, all right? But I think that's all the questions that I'm going to be taking for this week. Oh no, actually, here's one more. In Final Fantasy XIV, what does it mean to snapshot? You mentioned that dots are snapshotted on tanks when they turn on their tank stance. When I'm a red mage, I go Embolden plus melee phase. My Scorch spell tends to fire off just as Embolden goes from 100% to 80%. Guides on the bounce, however, suggest that my Scorch is still getting the full Embolden potency. Would you mind elaborating? That is no. Whenever your Scorch is casted, the second you press the Scorch button, Scorch isn't a dot, so this doesn't apply to this. Second you press Scorch, whatever your current buffs are what's going. Now, if in the time between you pressing Scorch and the number appearing, your Embolden ticks down, then yes, you're getting the 100%. But dots, if you dotted a target at 100% of a buff, I'll use Embolden as an example, even though it's kind of a bad one because red mages don't have a dot, and I don't want to get into the whole physical attribute for the party. Let's say you have a 5 stack of Embolden, and you throw a dot on the target, right? And then it ticks down to 80%, it ticks down to 60%, it ticks down to 40%. But that whole time, because you casted the dot when it was at 100% of its buff, it will maintain 100% of that buff for its entire duration. Now, if at 20% of Embolden, the one final stack remaining, you were to cast another buff, or you were to cast another dot, then it would only be getting the 20% buff. It would not extend the 100% buff. It's also true of Bard dots. Every time you extend the dots back to 30 seconds, it is resetting whatever buffs you actually had on it. So another thing to keep in mind. Which tribe did you pick in Crystal Chronicles? I was a Uke, because I wanted to be a spellcaster. Interesting and kind of awkward for co-op gameplay, but amazing for solo gameplay. It's no Selkie, but it's pretty nice. And I think with that is the last question that I'm going to be taking, because some of these are just more like melee healer questions or monk questions, and I don't have anything else to say about those topics, unfortunately. But that's going to be a wrap for this episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and ask your questions for next week's episode in the comment section of the video below. But on that note, I'm going to go enjoy the rest of my afternoon with a little bit of Avengers, watch a few live streams, and do that relaxation that I was talking about. Hopefully, again, you guys understand, because it's been pretty tough. As much as I want to talk about it, I also don't want to talk about it at the same time. But thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you, everyone, for asking questions, and I will see you in the next video, whether it's this, next week, or another video in between. But thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care.